I will share now give the floor to Venerable Dario Doshin Girolami.
So thank you very much. I am extremely happy to be here. As it has been said at the beginning, we have been working for more than a year in order to create this new EBU network. So I'm very, very happy to see that the network is up and alive and that we are here together discussing Dharma and sciences. So as for my talk, well, it's a twofold talk. The first part will be run by me and the second part will be run by Professor Antonino Raffone. We will talk about the 8 consciousnesses from the Dharma point of view and from the neuroscience point of view. So they are 2 parts of the same topic. As for the 8 consciousness, based on the Abhidharma, the Yogacara, or mind-only school, Cittamatra, developed a description of the 8 consciousnesses and an explanation of how the mind works and how it contributes to creating the reality we experience. So, with the Cittamatra, traditionally we say that is the 3rd turning of the wheel. So the first turning of the wheel was with Buddha and Shakyamuni Buddha, the 2nd turning of the wheel with Nagarjuna, and then the 3rd turning of the wheel with Vasubandhu and Asanga, his brother. They both created the Yogacara or Cittamatra or Vijnaptimatra school, the mind-only school. And they developed, based on Abhidharma studies, they developed, they described the mind and the functioning of the mind, and more specifically, the functioning of the consciousness. And they divided the consciousness into 8 consciousnesses. So I'll can share the screen and okay, I think you can see it in this very old style drawing. And so here we have the 8 consciousnesses. I'll describe them top down, and then bottom up, I'll go into details as much as I can with half an hour. So we have the taste consciousness, smell consciousness, touch consciousness, hearing consciousness, and sight consciousness. They are all connected to the mind consciousness. Then we have manas, and then alaya vijnana, or storehouse consciousness. So we have 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8 consciousnesses. So I'll go briefly top down and then bottom up in more details. So how it works briefly. So the sense organs enter in contact with their correspective object. For instance, the eyes enter in contact with forms and colors. And then the sight, for example, the sight consciousness is activated. The sight consciousness transmits the message, the input to the mind consciousness. In order for recognition to happen, mind consciousness activates manas, that is a dynamic part, a dynamic conscious that goes, let's say, down into the storehouse consciousness, alaya vijnana, where all categories, for the moment, let's say all the categories are deposited, and then find the categories that best describe whatever has been contacted by, for instance, the sight consciousness. And then manas brings the message up to the conscious level, to the mind consciousness. And then at this moment, recognition happens. So for instance, you see something like that, if you look at the stamp on the right, and then what is that? So the side consciousness sends the messages to the mind consciousness. Manas is activated, goes down into alaya vijnana, finds the category that best describes whatever you are looking at, and then the message comes up thanks to manas, and then there is recognition at the level of mind consciousness. And then at the mind consciousness level, we can say pen. Otherwise, what is that we are looking at? Okay, so let's go down to alaya vijnana and see how it works, and then go from the bottom up. So alaya vijnana, vijnana in Sanskrit is consciousness. Alaya, it means storehouse, deposit. If you don't know Sanskrit, don't be scared. Alaya is a word that you already know. How? Well, you all know Himalaya. Himalaya, the word Himalaya, the mountains. Well, Hima, it means snow, and Alaya is a compound in Sanskrit. Hima, Alaya. Hima means snow. Alaya means storehouse. So the Indian people were looking at the mountains where the snow was deposited and still is deposited, hopefully, and they recognize it as the snow deposit. So alaya is a word that you already know. Alaya vijnana is consciousness. Alaya vijnana is the storehouse consciousness, where all our categories and functions and experiences and memories are deposited. The storehouse consciousness has three functions. The first is to store and preserve all the seeds. So here we have done bija. Bija in Sanskrit means seed. So in the storehouse consciousness are deposited the seeds. The seeds are the seeds of our experiences. The seed buried in our store consciousness represent everything we ever done, experienced, or perceived. And the seeds planted by actions, experiences, and perceptions are the subject of consciousness. And the storehouse consciousness draws together all these seeds just as a magnet would attract particles of iron. The second aspect of store consciousness is the seeds themselves. We can say that a museum is more than the building. A museum is also the works of art that are displayed there. In the same way, storehouse consciousness is not just the storehouse of the seeds, but also the seeds that are found there. The third function of the store consciousness is a store for the attachment to a self. This is because of the very subtle and complex relationship between manas, the seventh consciousness that we will describe later, and the storehouse consciousness. So the primary function of the store consciousness is to store and preserve all the seeds. And the seeds, bijas, give phenomena the ability to perpetuate themselves. Our mind is like a field in which every kind of seed is sown. The seeds of compassion, joy, hope, but the seeds of sorrow, fear, difficulties. Every day, our thoughts, words, deeds plant new seeds in the field of our consciousness. And what these seeds generate becomes the substance of our life. And the seeds can be wholesome and unwholesome. There are both wholesome and unwholesome seeds in our mind field, sown by ourselves, but not only that, sown by our parents, our schooling, ancestors, and society. So we can say that the seeds are both of samsara and nirvana, of suffering and happiness. And we you will know the Pratitya Samutpada, the 12-fold chain of causation, and we found Vijnana. We find Vijnana in the Pratitya Samutpada or Paticca Samutpada. And so it's Avidya, Samskara, Vijnana, and then Namarupa in the 12-fold link. So Vijnana is just before Namarupa, body and mind. So the Buddhist psychology is telling us that Vijnana arises just before the arising of a body-mind complex. And this is something that has been developed by the Cittamatra, the Yogacara school, and solving very gently, in a very subtle way, the problem of anatta or anatman. Many of us, I'm sure, we had problems in understanding how is it possible reincarnation, how is it possible rebirth in Buddhism if there is no soul, if there is no Atman, so the teaching of Anatman or Anatta in Pali. Well, the Cittamatra school solved this problem by talking about Vijnana, and in particular, Alaya Vijnana. Alaya Vijnana, when we born, we already have an Alaya Vijnana that carry already many seeds from our past lives, from our past experiences. So it's not a subject, it's not a soul, it's not a self, it's just a container, a selfless container that shipped the past experiences from one life to the other. It's not a subject, it's not a soul, it's just a vessel, and subjectless vessel. But this is also saying that when at the moment of the birth, we already are equipped with seeds, with experiences, with predispositions, we can say, that will influence our activity for the rest of our life. And we have wholesome seeds and unwholesome seeds, seeds of compassion and seeds of greed, hate, and delusion. And the Alaya Vijnana is individual and collective. So we do have seeds, bija, that we sow in Alaya Vijnana, that we can imagine as a field. So we sow the seeds during our lifetime, but we have also the seeds coming from our past lives. But Alaya Vijnana is not only individual, it's collective. Let's go back to the Cittamatra school, Cittamatra, mind only. Very briefly, the mind only school says that basically reality is an illusion created by the mind. It's like a dream or maybe a nightmare. So how come that we are all dreaming the same dream? Because we can say, okay, so reality is just a projection of my mind. So you all are just a projection of my mind. But the fact is that we are all sharing a life. And this is explained, by the way, that the Alaya Vijnana is individual and collective. So it's not only my consciousness, storehouse consciousness, but it's a collective consciousness. This explains why we can all share this dream or nightmare, it depends. And we will see better later, but the tendency of these seeds can be influence, we say vashana, or impregnation, or habit energy. They can receive an influence. They can change. That is a bad news and a good news. That means that we can strengthen our bad habit, or we can strengthen, thanks to the practice of meditation, we can strengthen our good tendencies. We will see that later. And then we can talk about manas. So manas is a dynamic part, is a dynamic consciousness. As we said, it put in context the mind consciousness that, in terms of Western psychology, we can say that is the conscious, while manas is the preconscious, and alaya vijnana is the subconscious. So manas is between the conscious level and the unconscious level, and it connects the two levels. It's not exactly like that, but Professor Raffone can be more clear on that topic. So manas, the seventh consciousness, the relationship between manas and the store consciousness is very subtle. Manas arises from the store consciousness and takes a tiny part of the store consciousness to be the object of its attraction. It regards this part of store consciousness as a separate entity, a self, and it grasps onto it firmly. That's why we are not aware of all the seeds that are stored in the storehouse consciousness, because between the conscious level, the mind level, and the subconscious alaya vijnana level, there is manas that can be described as a cloud that clouds the vision of the mind consciousness, so the conscious mind can see only what manas wants. And manas is, traditionally we say that manas arises from alaya vijnana. So at the beginning is a part of alaya vijnana that arises from alaya vijnana and falls in love with just a little part of alaya vijnana. As we said, alaya vijnana is individual and collective, and as collective is infinite. But manas sees only a part, a tiny part of alaya vijnana. This is the origin, according to Yogacara, this is the origin of the self, of the sense that we have of a separate self. Manas is the culprit. But manas arises also as a function. Why do we have manas? Manas is, as I said, the dynamic part that puts in contact the mind consciousness with the storehouse consciousness, but it arises as a life-preserving system. Again, Professor Raffona can be more clear on that level, but it arises as a way of preserving our life. It's a self-protective system. But since it's like a cloud, in fact, if you look at the drawing, manas is like a wave or a cloud. So the mind conscious, we can say that. Why we don't see all the seeds that are deposited in alaya vijnana? The reason is because between there is manas that is like a wall. And then we have the mind consciousness, the sixth consciousness, mind consciousness, mano vijnana. So as we have learned, manas is the base of mind consciousness. And we have to say something else. The mode of perception of manas is always wrong, while the perception of alaya vijnana mind consciousness and the senses consciousness can be direct or indirect, can be right or can be wrong, the perception of manas is always wrong. That's why we have a perverted, a wrong perception of reality. So manas is the base of mind consciousness, and because the mode of perception of manas is always erroneous, much of what we perceive in our mind consciousness is also false. Because the nature of manas is obscured, our mind consciousness is often also covered over by delusion. Unlike manas, however, our mind consciousness is capable of other modes of perception as well, direct or inferred. So when our mind consciousness is able to perceive things directly, it is capable of touching the realm of suchness. In Buddhist psychology, the mind is considered a sense organ. In fact, in Buddhist psychology, we say that we have 6 senses, not only the 5 senses plus the mind. The object of sense of the mind are the mental formations. But still, mind is considered a kind of sense organ, not differently from the sight consciousness or hearing consciousness. So the content of the mind consciousness are the mental formations influenced by whatever is deposited in alaya vijnana. And then we have the senses consciousness, the eye, ear, nose, tongue, and body. So just as the soul consciousness is the base of manas, and manas is the base of mind consciousness, these 5 sense consciousnesses are based in the 6th consciousness, mind consciousness. And all 8 consciousness are in this way connected, interdependent. And the senses from which these 5 consciousness arise are sometimes referred to as gates or entrances, ayatana, because all the objects of our perception, all dharmas, enter our consciousness through sensory contact with them. For this reason, it's important to learn how to guard these gates, mindfulness practice, guard these gates into our consciousness, to choose wisely what we allow to enter and become seeds. And the way to do that is through mindfulness. So let's say that we do have a seed of anger. For causes and conditions, the seed of anger is activated. It goes up to the level of mind consciousness, and we get angry. By getting angry, we spread more seeds of anger that will fall into alaya vijnana, that is like a field. And so we every single time we get angry, we plant more seeds of anger, because that's what alaya vijnana does. It's like a field. Whatever we plant in alaya vijnana, it will grow. But we can use at our own advantage these characteristic of alaya vijnana. So every single time a seed of compassion arises and we act out of compassion, by acting out of compassion, we plant seeds, we spread seeds of compassion, and these seeds will fall into alaya vijnana and will give rise to more compassion. So again, we can use this characteristic of alaya vijnana at our own advantage. It's a matter of choice. What kind of seeds do we want to cultivate? What kind of seeds we don't want to cultivate? It's like a garden. In the Zen tradition, gardening is a spiritual practice. And it's not the only tradition, of course, where gardening is a spiritual practice. In the Christian tradition, monks, in certain traditions, monks they have as a spiritual practice to take care of a piece of land as a garden with flowers or with vegetables or with herbal medicines. But still, as a spiritual practice, they have to take care of this field. So our mind is like a field that has never been cultivated. So our practice, the practice of mindfulness, is cultivating this field, is taking care of this field, uprooting bad seeds, uprooting wild grass, pervasive wild, the pervasive wild grass of anger, greed, hate, and delusion, and planting and watering the seeds of compassion and wisdom and benevolence and so on. How we do that? Well, listening to a Dharma talk, we plant seeds of wisdom and compassion. These seeds fall into alaya vijnana, and then we sit in meditation, and meditation is like watering the seeds. It's not different from what we do with the garden. We put a seed and then nothing happens. Then we water the seed and nothing happens. And then magically we have a plant. So I'm sure that many of you sometimes thought, well, I have been meditating for a long time and nothing is happening. Well, it's the same thing as putting a seed in a vase and then say, well, nothing is happening. Yes, but there is something that is going on below, under the level of consciousness, where the work of alaya vijnana, together with the seeds, is transforming the seed and allowing the seed to sprout. So the mindfulness can be called, well, on one level with mindfulness, as I said, we guard the gates, the gates of perception. We are aware of what we put in our own storehouse consciousness. But mindfulness, the practice of meditation, is also considered to be watering the seeds. We sit and it seems that nothing is happening. Actually, we are watering the seeds that one day, when causes and conditions will be ripe, these seeds will arise. Of course, there is much more to say. Half an hour is not nearly enough, but I think that my time is out, so I can stop here. Thank you very much.